Good morning and welcome back to our Ask the Agronomist video series. I'm Kyla Watson here with Phil Long. How are you doing today, Phil?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's another day closer to Christmas, but it's an enjoyable time of the year.
Yes, that it is. I know last week we talked about the nice weather we're having, cooled off a little bit, but as far as where we're at, still not seeing much snow on the ground at all.
Yeah. Technically, winter's not even here yet, but it's starting to get cold now, and I imagine we're all starting to feel the chill. But yeah, not a lot of snow yet, so we need some of that recharge in the ground. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm sure end of December, beginning of January, February, it'll probably hit us like a ton of bricks.
Probably more than we want. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Well, today we're going to be talking about tying together two of our favorite things, product placement and then our precision ag platform Data Forward.
Yeah, exactly. I think, Data Forward, the whole point of the Data Forward program really is to help our growers, our dealers, everybody place products better. And that's really what we strive to do. That's my goal, looking at the amount of data that I look at, making sure that we get the information that a farmer needs to place products correctly, because we talk about that all year long. And typically it's what how it affects corn and beans. The way I like to think about it is 60 bushel beans, it's about 12 bushels of your soybeans per acre and about 40 bushel an acre on corn. So it makes a big difference, but that 20% of making sure that you place those genetics in the right field where they're going to perform at their best is really critical. And that's what my goal is with Data Forward. So.
Okay, very good. So we know product placement is important. What about multi-hybrid?
Sure. So this is we've been doing multi-hybrid here for a couple years, really just getting into it this year. Unfortunately, kind of like my experience in research with my master's degree, I had 2 years. One was during a drought and one was during a softball-sized hailstorm in August. So it never works out the way you want it to. But this year we had them placed really well. We used our multi-hybrid planter with Darren Chapman's planter. Got to put that on about 150 acres or so of a really variable farm, one that should have shown the true value of that. And it showed up, just not all the way around. So what we did, obviously with multi-hybrid, we had 2 hybrids out there. So we chose an offensive and a defensive. There was about 50-60% of the field's light and sandy, and about 40% is heavier ground. It typically holds water better and higher organic matter and that kind of thing. So we put 52-45 on the better ground and 50-20, actually, the conventional version of our drought guard on the lighter, sandier ground. And actually, it showed up really well. Given the year, it was in northwest Iowa, and at 50-20 still held up despite not having the drought guard gene in it. It is a very tolerant hybrid to stress, just based on the characteristics of the plant and the root structure and how it manages water. And it actually did about 30, just shy of 32 bushel better than 52-45 in the tough stress soil. So that really goes to show you why it's so important to place a product correctly, especially in a stressful situation. Now, on the flip side, on the heavy ground, given this year and the lack of rainfall, really under 15 inches of rainfall in that area was really tough season. 50-20 actually did better there too by about just over 2 bushels. So not a huge difference. If we reran the test, it probably would have came out, and 52-45 would have been on top. And that's typically what we see. It's usually a 5 to 8 bushel swing for the hybrid that should be placed in the tough area, and the hybrid that should be placed in the better areas. So overall, actually was really beneficial on the stressful side, not quite as beneficial on the heavy soil. So it didn't pay in terms of the planter upgrade in 1 year for sure, but gave us some good insight into product placement, because like I mentioned at the start of this, all university trials, they all show about that 20%, especially in corn hybrids, and placing a product correctly. So that would have put us, that's 40 bushel on the 200 bushel crop. And this one was 30, 31, 32 bushels. So it showed right up there and made a difference, especially in the stressful soils this year.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I think it's one thing when you talk about 20% of a yield swing, but then it's another thing when you translate that into actual bushels not coming off that field. That's huge.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes a huge difference in the bottom line. That's the key. If you multiply it out and look at it, especially now, commodity prices have been a little more favorable as we went into past harvest here. But yeah, it makes a huge difference. That's roughly $100 an acre difference. And not necessarily profit, but net income. You're getting $100 more money per acre, and that makes a big difference. So that's why it's so important. All these decisions we always sometimes maybe take lightly. The decision that farmers make on the seed purchase is critical to their bottom line every year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, do you have any tips to share with us this morning about product placement?
Yeah, so the way I look at it, and with this field especially, I look at the field as a whole, and then I kind of narrow it back. And the best part about Data Forward is we already provide that for the farmer that's involved in Data Forward and in the program. We look at each field in terms of productivity zones. So we break it out. We look at past yield and any layer of information that they may have, so we can break each field out into those areas, of higher productivity and lower productivity. So below average, above average, average, we want to take it all into account. And then we look at every year's yield data based on those zones. So we go back and we can see that. So every year the farmer gets a report, they're going to see, okay, this is how far above and below my average I was, and these are the areas. Did they grow? Are they smaller or bigger? That kind of thing. So then you can kind of get an understanding of how that field lays, how it's changing. Obviously, this year, we can never rely on the average, but this year was also an exception in terms of abnormally dry in a lot of areas. But it provides a good perspective on every field that the farmer farms to understand how the variability in that field is. And then you can make a better selection, whether you need a defensive or an offensive hybrid. I don't like to place a defensive hybrid unless that field needs it. If it's 60-70% light sandy soil, then I'm going to lean towards more defensive hybrid. Or if it has challenges, or I'd say more challenges than opportunities, something like sand versus a heavy, more drowned out spot. I wouldn't necessarily place a defensive hybrid on a heavy soil that has poor drainage, when you can overcome some of those factors with things like fungicide, seed treatment, other things. Keep a more offensive hybrid there to really boost up the yield. But when it comes to looking at the fields, I typically kind of do a percentage. I look and see how much of that field is challenging versus the opportunistic things going on in the field. And then you got to do the best you can. It's kind of like weather forecasting, plan for the average. You don't want to plan for the worst. That's why I know Lyle, our corn product manager, and Mark as well, both been talking about how not to look at 2020, plan for 2021 like it's 2020. We don't want to see a repeat of any one year. We want to plan the best for the averages that we typically see.
All right, very good. And now tying into the data forward side of things a little bit, I think one thing that a lot of times people don't realize is that they get direct access to you and Darren and other experts on the team to help analyze that data and pinpoint exact things that they can use for their farm.
Yeah, exactly. Darren and I pay especially close attention, make sure that we customize what the grower really is seeking to find. Maybe it's a lot of on-farm research and they're trying to decide which products or which practices are really, showing up in their bottom line. So we can analyze those things. But, number one I said was the productivity zones. Those really help in understanding the variation in your fields. The second thing is that when we analyze yield at this time of the year, we can look at those hybrids, those varieties, and analyze them across anything that particular grower wants to see. So maybe it's soil types, maybe it's those zones, maybe it's pH, using soil fertility results. We can look at it that way, see how each one performs. And obviously we're going to give them maturities and things like that, and so that they can understand which hybrids are really doing best on their farm. That's why we always encourage more than one hybrid, more than one variety, because you understand, you spread out that risk, and then you can understand over time, over many years, which ones are really outperforming the others on your farm. So, and the last thing I always say is we provide a planting book. I got one here in front of me, a kind of summary on what's going to be planted in that field and those farms. I always include, especially on our own farm, to make sure that we have stuff for the the GPS and how to run the monitors and things like that, so that farmers don't have to question or get worked. They can just worked up. They can look back, see it right there at the front of the book, and push the right buttons. But then it also has each farm and shows which hybrid and variety goes there, so that you can make sure that those that now when you're sitting down thinking about them, that those actually come to fruition in the spring when you're stressed and maybe not necessarily thinking about exactly which hybrid or variety went there. That helps make sure that they're there because it's in the tractor with you.
All right, sounds good. And just one final thought that I want to share that I also think is unique with our Data Forward program is that one size doesn't fit all. And our team is very diligent in recognizing that and helping each customer with that.
Yeah, and we got a huge team behind us. I mean, obviously, Darren and myself worked very hard on this program, but we've got a really good team support staff behind us, too, that we can ask questions and go further if we need to. I've always been one to seek out the answer if I don't know it, and I'll happily admit that if that's the case. But so yeah, we look forward to helping every individual, and like you said, everybody's needs are a little bit different.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Well, is there anything else that you would like to add this morning?
Nope. Continued, like I said, we could use a little more rain, or well, I prefer snow this time of the year, but need a little bit more ground recharge in the groundwater. So other than that, I'm just thankful for this time of the year.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you for joining us this morning, Phil.
You're welcome.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Have a good day.